Well, it's my final day of my 2-week memorable holiday on Skye. It's Friday, beautiful weather again, and I'm in Glen Brittle, which has an almost mythical air to it in Benhead. Kind of like places like Chamonix do in the Alps. They just have that air of mountains about them, and you hear stories about these far off places that you think you probably won't ever visit. And Glen Brittle's always been one of those places you hear it mentioned and written about in the context of mountains and exploits and adventures, such that it builds up this status in your head. So it seems quite strange when you come here. It's quite an unassuming place. It's pretty much like any other glen in Scotland, but it does have this history of being a staging post for people going up into the Cuillin, and that's where I'm going into today. This will actually be my very first foray onto the Black Cuillin, which I still can't quite believe, really, seeing as I've been walking in the Scottish hills for such a long time. But these ones do have a sort of intimidating presence because they are so widely regarded as being the closest thing that Britain has to an alpine range of, I was going to say hills, but mountains, because they are so jagged, complex, sheer, but also difficult to navigate in. It can be confusing terrain to navigate in, with the added complication that the volcanic rock is such that compasses aren't always of use, which is never what you want to hear when you're trying to navigate your way out of fog on a hillside. So I suppose I kind of avoided them. I always thought that I'd hire a guide and do the entire ridge, which is very, very long, over innumerable tops, many of which are Munros. Is it 11 Munros, 10, 11 Munros? So it's a big, big undertaking where you need ropes, helmets, and of course it's famous for having the only, well, it's having a few of them really, but the inaccessible pinnacle, the in-pin, which is certainly a Munro that you cannot climb without ropes, or at least you'd be bonkers to try. I think the Cuillin occupy a place in my head that they used to have the cairngorms for company when I first moved up to Scotland. The cairngorms, which are so intimidatingly vast, bleak, inhospitable. I found them quite overawing and intimidating for a long while. I've got over that over time, and now I'm confident being out on the plateau. But now whereas before I think I was scared of it, I now just have a healthy respect for it. But places like this, the Cuillin, they still have that air about them for me. So it's quite a momentous day for me actually, making a trip into the hills here. Even though, arguably, I'm doing one of the more mild-mannered of them, Skye na Bagdi, which is, well, it's still rough and wild and steep in parts, but doesn't require teetering on sharp ridges or wildly exposed scrambling. So it seems a nice one to sort of get up in good weather and actually see what the ridge has to offer. Well, that's where we're going, up this ridge here, and the summit is up there. Now, I don't think it helps their reputation having a name like the Black Cuillin. Stick black on the front of anything and it just makes it instantly feel a bit more imposing. The Black Loch, the Black Corrie, Black Glen, or whatever. I think it was called the pink Cuillin, or aubergine Cuillin, marigold Cuillin even. I'm sure everyone would find it a much more enticing prospect. But really, I suppose they're well named, in that they do have that rather fearsome reputation. Oh, it's steep and rocky, but I'd expect nothing less. Good views today though. McLeod's Tables over there, and the Western Isles again, stretched out along the horizon. Got another eagle over there. It's hard to focus. It looks like one. Looks nice and big. That's number 12. 12th eagle I've seen. It's been a veritable eagle parade this past week. It's gone very calm here, just as we're approaching the crest of the ridge. I'm getting quite excited actually about what I'm going to find when I get up there. It's quite deceptive because there's no trees or anything else to actually gauge scale. I can't see any people or cairns or trig points. You don't really know how far it is. Definitely getting closer, but it's taking its fair time, that's for sure. Hello. Well, there's reason to stay vigilant and a reminder that it is winter up here. Just a sheen, a film of ice over all these rocks. These rocks are wonderfully grippy, ice aside. It's all a volcanic rock called gabbro for the most part, which is very coarse and gives excellent grip for your boots. But it's plus points and minus points. While it's great for your boots, if you actually start gripping it, it's so coarse. I mean, it can strip the skin off your fingers very, very easily. Oh, it's just a slog now. It's dead calm. Whether it remains that way on the summit remains to be seen. Oh my. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You just sort of arrive at the summit without warning. Oh wow. Suddenly you get a really clear sense of just how different these hills are to most other stuff in Scotland. It seems too, I don't know, almost demeaning to call them hills. I mean, these are mountains, proper mountains to rival anything that you'll see elsewhere in the world. It's just amazing views out to Rum. Actually, all the small isles, there's Egg's over there. This is Rum, that's the Rum Cuillin there, Hallival and Askival. And over here, actually, you can see the beaches. If it's focusing, see the beaches over on Rum. That one in the middle there, that's Kilmorey Bay. That's the deer study area that where they have one of the longest running scientific studies of animals anywhere in the world, I believe. It's been going for decades. And of course Canna is over there. Well, there you go, that's my first time I set foot on the Cuillin Ridge, and it has not disappointed. I was expecting something that looked pretty spectacular, but I wasn't expecting anything looking quite as alpine. I mean, this looks like, I have been to the Alps, this looks how I remember the Alps, just impossibly jagged, proper mountains. I'm quite in awe of this, it's incredible. And you can just see how, I mean, this is the ridge going all the way along here, and it's so precarious. The drops are enormous, and though the rock is grippy, you can't take that for granted, because though much of what's in the Cuillin is gabbro, they do have these what are called volcanic intrusions of other rock. There's after all this form, essentially this is all the product of an enormous, great big volcano complex. What's called a magma chamber deep underground, 60 million years ago. These aren't volcanoes per se, this is the remnants, all these rocks, so these mountains are the remnants of the magma chamber that fed the volcanoes that were on the surface, and everything's been eroded away since by the ice ages, and this is what's left. So this is essentially the magma chamber. This is what was below the ground, this never really reached the surface. There was other magma poking its way through the rock that was already here, and that's called an intrusion, though it didn't actually reach the surface in a lot of cases, but it was a different type of rock to gabbro, and it was basalt that was coming through. So you can trottle on the ridge quite merrily, but occasionally you'll reach these outcrops of basalt that have been fed through the gabbro at a later time, and basalt, when it gets wet, is very, very sort of slippy and greasy, so you can't let your guard down at all. It's easily the most spectacular setting I've filmed any vlog in. I mean, I'm not straddling the ridge, but I'm not far off, actually. I mean, it's not... I'm almost... I mean, it's very narrow here. And looking over there, if you did... I mean, people do this whole ridge. People do the whole ridge in 2 days. Some loons, some bonkers people run it in hours. I mean, it defies sense that people can even do that. But people do that. But some of this stuff is so steep up here. Yeah, it's incredible, absolutely incredible. I've always wanted to come up here, and this is just wonderful. In a way, it's facing a kind of fear in a way. It's one of the best medicines for a fear, probably, isn't it? Actually facing it, like if you're scared of spiders, and get someone to actually plonk one in your hand to show that it doesn't actually hurt you. Way over there is the one hill I have done, that's Blethering, and that's Loch Carbost down there, which is, I've never been down there. Very hard to get to, you have to come over these hills to get to it, or I think you can get boat trips maybe from Elgol that come through and drop you off and you can walk in, but it's probably one of the finest examples of glacial architecture with a lake plonked down at the bottom of it that you can find in this country. And that up there is the inaccessible pinnacle, which looks so improbable balanced there like that. Just insane. You can see why you need proper climbing gear to get up there. The exposure must be unreal. I think it's time to go. It's quite an awesome place, and I'm glad I've come up and done one and got a taste of what's up here. What has surprised me actually is, I knew it was rocky, but I didn't really realise quite how fractured. You can just see how everything is just fracturing from frost. The whole hillsides are just falling apart. It's incredible. I mean, it's just, there's no... The whole ground moves because everything's so fractured and there's rock everywhere. It's quite an intimidating place, but it's amazing. Very, very pleased.